And our next story is from Afghanistan. Earlier today, it hosted a ceremony to welcome a new envoy, Zhao Sheng, China's new ambassador to Afghanistan. And this afternoon, he met the Taliban's Prime Minister, Mullah Hassan Akhund, in Kabul to present his credentials. Also present at the meeting were several other top Taliban officials. Now, why is this development significant? Because China has effectively become the first country to establish diplomatic relations with the Taliban. You see, ever since the Taliban returned, every nation cut diplomatic ties with Kabul. Some of them have reopened their embassies and consulates, but they have not established official diplomatic relations. And China now has become the first country to do so. The question is, why? And the answers are several. You see, this move follows a series of business deals and investments that China has made in Afghanistan. In the last 2 years, it has struck several agreements and expanded many projects in the country. They all seem to be aimed at strengthening Beijing's foothold in Afghanistan, filling the vacuum left by the West, and not to mention gaining an upper hand over India. I mean, just have a look at some recent developments. 3 weeks back, there were reports that China is setting up a surveillance network in Afghanistan, a surveillance network. Reports said Chinese telecom giant Huawei had got approval from the top levels of the Haqqani network in Afghanistan to install CCTV cameras. And why does the Taliban want Chinese cameras? Well, apparently to mitigate security threats, particularly from terror outfits like the Islamic State Khorasan province. And as for China, the CCTV systems could give China access to foreign facial recognition databases, which it can then utilize for its own domestic security efforts. What sort of domestic security efforts, you ask? Countering separatist movements back home. You see, China's growing interest in Afghanistan is not just for economic reasons. It also has a security dimension. Ever since it returned to power, Beijing has been asking the Taliban to crack down on the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, ETIM. This is a separatist outfit in Xinjiang, which allegedly has links with radical groups like the Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. And it does not end there. In May this year, the Taliban agreed to extend the BRI in Afghanistan. The Taliban's top diplomat, Amir Khan Muttaqi, met top Chinese officials to reach the agreement. And besides this, China is also after Afghanistan's resources. In January, China's National Petroleum Corporation inked a contract to extract oil from the Amu Darya Basin. And oil is, you see, just one piece of this puzzle. Afghanistan may be one of the poorest nations in the world, but it sits on a vast resource of mineral deposits. In the year 2010, American geologists said the worth of these deposits could be at least $1 trillion. 1 trillion. That's more zeros than the Taliban can actually count. What sort of minerals are these? The ones that actually matter. Iron, copper, gold, lithium, cobalt, uranium, bauxite, sulfur, rare earths, gemstones, you name it, Afghanistan has it. But just how much? Let me give you a quick breakdown here. A 2010 report by Afghanistan's Ministry of Mines put the country's copper resource at almost 30 million tons. And another report from the same year said that there were another 28.5 million tons of copper in undiscovered deposits. And that would bring the total to roughly 60 million tons, which, given the current prices at London Metal Exchange, will be worth more than $500 billion. Next, iron ore. The same report said that Afghanistan had more than 2.2 billion tons of steel-making raw material iron ore. And how much is this worth is the immediate question. Over $350 billion at the current market prices. It seems China is after all of this. The question is, what does China's growing closeness to Afghanistan mean? What could it eventually lead to in the long run, especially vis-a-vis India? I can think of two ways. First, it weakens India's position as an economic and strategic partner of Afghanistan. Despite the Taliban coming to power, India has maintained this role for security reasons. It remains one of the biggest regional donors to Afghanistan. With the extension of BRI, China could overshadow India's role, and it could disrupt India's economic and trade activities in Afghanistan. And second, given India's limited strategic depth in Afghanistan, the extension of the BRI will give Pakistan the upper hand. A smoother passage for the flow of arms and terrorists. Not to mention a bit better chance of using them against India. But then again, it seems the China-Afghanistan relationship is no longer dependent on Pakistan, especially now when Afghanistan has embarked on a decoupling of sorts from Islamabad. The situation at the Afghan-Pak border is tense, to say the least. The Taliban have scrapped the use of the Pakistani currency, and Taliban fighters are joining the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. But it seems Taliban has made up its mind to chalk its own course and future. And what is China doing about all of this? In one word, nothing. It is further giving the Taliban legitimacy by making its diplomatic relations official. It seems in this growing closeness between Kabul and Beijing, it is Islamabad that will end up being collateral damage. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the updates on the move.